And Liz, you're now live.
Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Michi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Saugig and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Islands First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize the original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please? Members Snyder and Donald.
Be it resolved that the July 14th, 2025 Land Division Committee agenda be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Hearing none. Good afternoon to the public and welcome to Haliburton's Land Division Committee. My name is Liz Danielson. I'm the chair of the committee. I'd like to introduce you to the other members of the committee. Tammy McKelvey, Councillor at Large for Minden Hills. Pat Kennedy, Public Member for Dysart et al. Bob Snyder, Public Member representing Highlands East. And Bill Donald, Public Member representing Algonquin Highlands. We're also joined by our Director of Planning, Elizabeth Purcell, who will also act today as the official Land Division Secretary. This meeting is held through remote electronic participation in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. The purpose of the hearing is to give each applicant or their authorized agent the opportunity to discuss their application with the committee and to respond to written submissions which may have been received. It's also an opportunity for committee members to broaden their understanding of each application by asking questions. Members of the public who are participating virtually today may also make oral submissions to the committee, whether in support of or opposition to an application. We do hear the applications in the same orders they were received in our office, and our Director of Planning will introduce each application and provide planning briefs. Then participants who have registered to address the committee will be admitted virtually to speak with the committee, and each participant will be provided 5 minutes to speak with the committee. With that, we'll now proceed with the agenda. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of June the 19th? Member Kennedy, and seconded by Member Snyder.
Be it resolved that the minutes of the Land Division Committee meeting held June 9th, 2025 be approved as printed and circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. So we'll move on to the applications for consent. The first being Barry for a lot addition on Gillard Road.
Thank you, Chair Danielson. I will just share my screen. Okay, I trust you can all see that.
Yep.
The subject property is located at 4951 Gellert Road in the township of Minden Hills. Property has an existing lot area of 1.87 hectares and 135.25 meters of frontage on Gellert Road, being a county road. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling and detached shed. The property is designated rural lands in the county's official plan and zoned rural residential exception 9 in the township's zoning bylaw. The benefiting lot has an area of 33.4 hectares and 285 meters of frontage on Gellert Road and is developed with a single detached dwelling as well as various accessory structures related to the farming use on site. Wetlands are identified along the northerly and easterly boundaries of the benefiting lot. It's proposed that a portion of the subject property be conveyed as a lot addition to the benefiting lands, having an area of 0.65 hectares and 21.6 meters of frontage on Gellert Road. The subject property was previously created via a consent application, so in order to facilitate the lot addition, a cancellation of the original consent application is also required and is part of the applications for consideration. The resultant lot configurations would not have any negative impacts with relation to the adjacent wetland features. Additionally, the minor adjustments to the existing lot lines would not result in the need to recalculate minimum distance separation formula for the adjacent farm use to ensure compatibility is maintained. Lastly, County Public Works has no concerns with the reconfiguration as it relates to the frontage on and access to the county road. No other comments or concerns were received. Accordingly, it's recommended that both the consent cancellation and lot addition applications be approved, subject to the conditions detailed in the staff report.
Okay, do any members of the committee have questions for our Director of Planning? Member McKelvey? You're on mute.
There, sorry. Not so much a question, but just a clarification. It makes reference in the report to Glert Road being County Road 21, which is actually County Road 1. I don't think that makes a difference as far as the class of roadway from what I saw in the official plan, but.
Through you, Chair. No, that was just a unfortunate typo, but the comments from County Public Works still stand as no concerns.
Thank you.
Other questions from committee members at this point? Hearing none, I believe that we have some speakers. Mr. Langdon and Ms. Jamal. Are they present to speak?
I believe that's for the next application, Chair Danielson.
Oh, sorry. Jacqueline Berry wished to speak to the application. Sorry about that. Is she present?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions or concerns from the committee, just to double check, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this application, either in support or opposition? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report outlining the details for the application for consent cancellation and the application for consent to grant provisional approval to both? Member Donald, seconded by Member Kennedy. Thank you.
Be it resolved that the Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received the report related to application for consent cancellation H01925 and application for consent H02025, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent cancellation H01925, subject to the conditions of approval, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H02025, subject to the conditions of approval. Member McKelvey?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Yes.
Member Donald?
Yes.
Member Kennedy?
Yes.
And Chair Danielson.
Yes. Okay, the second application is by Langdon and Jamal for a new rural residential lot on Ritchie Falls Road.
Thank you, Chair Danielson. The subject property is located at 1498 Ritchie Falls Road in the township of Minden Hills. The property has an existing lot area of 6.7 hectares and approximately 285 meters of frontage on Ritchie Falls Road, being a township road. Property is developed with a single detached dwelling and is designated rural lands in the county official plan, as well as having an identified provincially significant wetland, being the Lachlan Wetland Complex, on the northerly and westerly portions of the lot. The lands are zoned hazard and rural in the township zoning bylaw. It's proposed that one new lot be created from the existing land holdings. The severed lot is proposed to have an area of 1.4 hectares and 60 meters of frontage on Ritchie Falls Road. The retained lot will have an area of 5.2 hectares and 225 meters of road frontage. In support of the application, an environmental impact study was completed by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, which identified watercourses, wetlands, fish habitat, and species at risk on or adjacent to the subject lands. The report identifies a suitable building envelope and driveway location for the severed lot, as well as recommendations related to clearing of the building envelope and construction practices. The report concludes that with the implementation of the recommendations contained in the report, development of the proposed lot would not have negative impacts on the natural features or their functions. Additionally, an aggregate deposit has been identified on the subject lands as well as the surrounding area. And while the PPS directs municipalities to direct land use in a fashion that preserves the ability to extract these deposits, based on surrounding environmental features and adjacent rural residential land use constraints, extraction of potential aggregate from the subject lands may be difficult or not feasible. With that, no comments were received with respect to the application, and it's recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions provided in the staff report.
Questions for Ms. Purcell? Hearing none, I have listed for speakers the applicants, Stephen Langdon and Abidya Jamal. Are they present to speak?
I believe in support of the application, it's both Stephen Langdon, Steve Brand, their applicant, the applicant representing them, as well as Bev Wicks from Riverstone Environmental.
Okay, so if we want to hear first from Mr. Langdon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Steve Langdon, the landowner. I just thought I would attend. Bev Wicks is available as well. She's from Riverstone if there's any other questions.
Okay, Mr. Brand, before we go to Bev Wicks, did you have any comments that you wish to make?
Test there. Test, Liz. Can you hear me? Steve Brand?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I've listened to everything and everything seems to be on track.
Okay, over to you, Ms. Wicks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just here to answer questions if council had questions on the application. So I don't really have anything to say, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Do any members of the committee have questions for those representing the application? Hearing none, then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the staff report and grant provisional approval to the application? Moved by Member Kennedy, seconded by Member McKelvey.
The Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received the staff report related to application for consent H01825, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H01825, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. Member McKelvey?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Yes.
Member Donald?
Yes.
Member Kennedy?
Yes.
And Chair Danielson?
Yes, that's carried. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you too. And our third application is from the McKellar Family Trust for a consent cancellation and the creation of 2 new shoreline residential lots.
Thank you. The subject property is legally described as part of lots 7 and 8, concession 14, parts 1 to 6, plan 19R 6070, with no municipal addresses assigned. The lands are located on the easterly side of Quagga Lake in the municipality of Dysart et al. And the overall land holdings have an area of 4.8 hectares and 305 meters of straight line frontage on Quagga Lake. They're water access only and are currently vacant. The property is designated rural lands in the county's official plan with wetland overlays and is abutting a lake trout lake not at capacity. The lands are zoned waterfront residential type 4L in the municipality's zoning bylaw. The land holdings currently exist as two separate properties, and through these applications, it's proposed that the consent applications that created the two properties be canceled. The lands merge as one property and then be subsequently divided into three properties, or one additional property than what currently exists. Accordingly, it's proposed that severed lot 1 would have an area of 1.72 hectares and 100 meters of water frontage. Severed lot 2 would have an area of 1.79 hectares and 105 meters of water frontage. And the retained lot would have an area of 1.29 hectares and 101.8 meters of water frontage. In support of the applications, as well as due to the classification of Coagama Lake being a lake trout lake not at capacity, an environmental impact study was prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions. The report provides recommendations related to the preservation of fish habitat and water quality, endangered and threatened species, as well as vegetation removal and construction practices. The report concludes that, generally speaking, there are no limitations beyond the municipality's zoning requirements for development, as sensitive fish habitat was not found along the property stretch of shoreline, nor any sensitive land-based features that would need to be avoided. The report does provide recommendations for clearing windows as it relates to bat roosting and a variety of construction mitigation practices that will be implemented through the conditions of consent approval. One letter was submitted by an adjacent property owner noting in particular concerns with potential drainage and runoff issues, the size of the proposed lots, as well as the circulation of the applications. For community's benefit with respect to runoff and drainage, the Drainage Act does not permit increased flows onto other properties due to development occurring. And at present, 2 dwellings as well as accessory structures could be developed on the lands, and the applications would result in a net increase of 1 new dwelling and associated accessory structures being permitted. Access to the lots is proposed to remain as water access only. Additionally, the scope of which consent applications are reviewed from a planning perspective is limited to the provisions of the official plan. With respect to lot areas and frontages, any application must meet the minimum requirements for lot size as set out in the official plan, which these applications exceed the minimum of 0.8 hectares in the county OP or 0.4 hectares in the Dysart OP. Lastly, I can confirm that the property that is owned by the letter's author was circulated the notice of these applications in accordance with the Planning Act. However, unfortunately, the Planning Act doesn't require municipalities in Ontario to send registered mail notices. So at times notices do unfortunately get lost in the mail through that process. But yes, I can confirm that the notices for these applications were mailed out with Canada Post on June 30th. There were no other comments received for these applications, and the proposal does meet the intent of the official plan. Accordingly, it's recommended that the applications are approved, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for our Director of Planning? Member Kennedy.
I guess just to confirm, this is only creation of actually 1 new lot. So the provision will be they have to provide 2 parking spots for that 1 lot. They already have 4 in existence, I take it.
Through you, Chair Danielson, I believe that because these are entirely new applications, the property owner will need to provide adequate access for all 3. So essentially the consent cancellation will cancel out anything that's already occurred. And although right now, if they weren't pursuing these applications, 2 lots could be developed because the consent cancellation will occur and it'll go back to 1 lot. It essentially erases what was approved in the past and they're starting fresh. So all lots will have to meet that requirement.
Okay, that might be a challenge at that public launch. It's tight, I know.
Member McKelvey.
Just on there's a survey in the package. It's page 12 of 84. It shows H1996 and H2096 being those previous severances, but it also says something about 17394. Is that something different, or what is that application from? It's part 3 on the plan.
Through you, Chair Danielson, I'm not entirely sure. It could have been a previous application and where the overall land holdings that created the 2 lots in 1996 was created prior, and it looks like it's from 94. So because there's a reference plan for the 96 consent, that's what we would be dealing with through the consent the consent cancellation application.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, we have a number of speakers on this application. First of all is Colin McKellar, who is the owner of the property.
Chair Danielson, I believe the only person that's in the waiting room for this application would be Stefan Serbak from Plantscape.
Landscape. Okay, do you want to bring Mr. Serbak in? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Danielson and members of the committee. My name is Stefan Scherbach, and I'm with Plantscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge, P1L 1Z8. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Perfect, good, thank you. I just have a very brief presentation just to basically start off that Plantscape was retained by the owners to assist with these applications. Mr. McKellar is presently online and he might be available in case there's any questions I can't answer. First of all, thank you to Ms. Purcell for her presentation to the committee. It's a very thorough planning report, and I also wanted to extend my thanks to Mr. Kozwalski for his professionalism, help, and assistance with this file, especially his suggestion to reach out to a lawyer to consider using this new section under the Planning Act that permits the canceling of previous severances. I think this is the first time I've actually used it, so it was a learning experience for me as well. We've also been spending some time with township staff at Dysart to ensure the application conformed to their official plan, and had many discussions with staff before their report went forward to their council. I've read Ms. Purcell's staff report, fully agree with the thorough planning policy analysis and the specific recommendations. Maybe just to provide a very brief summary, as was mentioned earlier, this application involves 2 existing waterfront lots, and collectively the owners are seeking to request the creation of 1 new lot for their family estate planning purposes. The subject property is very typical for Kawagama Lake, having some moderate slopes near the shoreline, where it levels out and further beyond the shoreline yard. The surrounding neighborhood is characterized by some similarly sized lots, and there's actually quite a few larger lots, even directly south, that exist in the area. A lot of typical cottage development is found in this area at the east end of the lake. Some applicants are fortunate enough to have road access, others do not. So I think the cottages in and around this area are very moderately sized in accordance with the location on the lake. The site is vacant, lots of vegetation, and through the scoped environmental impact statement, there is a conclusion that a 30-meter setback from the water is appropriate in these instances. And as Ms. Purcell duly noted, there'll be no impacts, negative impacts to the environmental features or functions, or impacts on the water quality of Kawagama Lake, provided the recommendations are implemented. That was a conclusion in the report itself. With respect to the planning policies, there's no matters of provincial interest. Both the county and local OPs permit severances for future recreational residential uses. And with the exception of the condition to cancel the previous severances, in my opinion, this seems that the application is fairly straightforward with standard conditions should the committee wish to support this request. You'll also find a planning justification report that is very similar to the planning policy reviewed with the staff report. I agree with staff that the applications are consistent with the provincial planning statement. They conform to the county and local OPs and represent good planning. Just in closing, The applicant did spend some time reaching out to his immediate neighbors, as indicated in the letter of objection that you received. The owner did note that a lot of his immediate neighbors are fully in support. Unfortunately, they didn't get an opportunity to write in, but he did do a lot of door knocking over the last couple of weeks and weekends. With respect to that letter of opposition, Ms. Purcell is exactly correct. Any concerns related to the environment, in my mind, have been duly reviewed under the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement. And with respect to concerns over density and water frontage, again, the proposed severances exceed or meet, or if not exceed, those minimum requirements in both the county and the Dysart official plan. The other important point too is technically the owners can build at 20 meters from the water today with those two lots. So having gone through this EIS, there's actually a benefit here where any future development is going to be pushed further back from the water. So again, another thing to take into consideration. So my final point is with respect to the conditions of approval, again, fully support what's in front of you. I do have two questions, if I may, and I apologize if this isn't the right venue, but Condition 13 under the county conditions is very technical in nature and relates to an order under Section 150 of the Land Titles Act. Maybe I can have an offline discussion, but that's a very interesting section. I've never seen that before. Again, I don't want to take up the committee's time. I'm happy to discuss that later, but that's an interesting condition. And the one final point with respect to the committee members' question, as it relates to cash in lieu of parkland, I would assume that this cash in lieu of parkland has been paid already for one of the two lots. Similarly, together with the parking, if I'm not mistaken, there was a cash in lieu paid at Dysart for the parking there as well. So my question is, I know it's canceling it, but I think there's been some money submitted already for parkland and for the parking. Wondering if the county is going to charge it again under this instance, or if there's just the need to charge it for one new lot, considering there's two that exist today. Again, I don't want to cause any issues. If this is going to cause concern, just leave it as it is, and I can have a discussion with Ms. Purcell afterwards. I just did want to raise that in this instance. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Any response that you want to make at this time, Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We can speak offline, Stefan, about condition 13. It is one of our standard conditions, so we could just talk more about how that is satisfied. In terms of cash in lieu of parking or cash in lieu of parkland, that is actually a municipal condition that we would just be notified at the county whether or not it's been satisfied to their satisfaction. So I can help facilitate the discussion with Dysart staff, but ultimately, yes, it is up to them how they address those two matters. And yeah, happy to discuss further offline though.
Do the members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Surbeck? Hearing none, thank you, sir. And I would ask if there is anyone else online who wishes to speak to the application.
Chair Danielson, there isn't anyone online, but I did get an email from the author of the letter that was received. She's having some difficulty connecting to the Zoom call, but did send me an email of what she was going to say. So if you would like me to read it for the committee, I'd be happy to do so.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. It says, good afternoon. My name is Jan Dawson Chernuk, and I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak at today's meeting. Our grandfather and grandmother purchased this land back in the early 40s after camping around the lake for a number of years. At one point, they owned approximately 900 acres at this end of the lake. They used a 1.5 horsepower motor on a homemade flat bottom boat with oars to travel the lake from Russell's Landing to the property, since no roads existed around the lake at that time. As they grew older, they built a second cottage at Russell's Landing that is still in the family today. Their love of this lake was evident to the family, their children, and has been passed on to their grandchildren and now great-great-grandchildren in how they promoted the respect for the environment and the good stewardship of the land. We recognize that development is inevitable as we witness the changes, in especially the morning and evening speedboat races that now frequent this end of the lake. Our concern with the further subdivision of the existing lots adjacent to ours is that with development, we all get less than desirable results. That's it.
Well, I mean, it's nice to hear about somebody's family history and their care and concern for the lake and the environment. I'm not sure that there's anything that's specific to planning that we can point to that would change the committee's position. Any comments from committee on the letter? Member McKelvey?
Just that the letter didn't outline any planning objections, so it's really not relevant. But there was a very detailed environmental completed, and Dyser is going to make them go into a development agreement to implement that. So I think a lot of their concerns in the original letter that I saw will definitely be dealt with that agreement. So.
And I know that there are a lot of concerns that have been raised by increased activity on the lakes, things like wake and larger boats, and a lot of concerns that are actually out of our control. I mean, it is unfortunate to see some of the changes that have taken place, but as you say, they are not specific to planning arguments. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak either for or against the application?
There doesn't appear anyone in the waiting room.
Member Snyder. Yeah, you're on mute, Bob.
Sorry, this is just a very thought question. If we cancel the original consent and then they're unable to meet the terms of the new consents, are they left with one lot?
Through you to Danielson, yes, they would. Typically what would happen though is that they would not go for the cancellation of the existing consents until the conditions for all the applications have been cleared by both the municipality and the county. And then it would be a matter of how each is registered with the land registry office. So the consent cancellation would go first to create the overall lot, and then the other two would be registered to then subdivide it into the new lots. So usually they're done all in one package, just in a specific order.
So it'll be up to the lawyers. Okay, no problem.
Any other questions? Then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report related to the application for consent cancellation and the two applications for consent, and to grant provisional approval for all three? Members Donald and Snyder.
The Land Division Committee of the County of Haliburton received the report related to application for consent cancellation H01525 and applications for consent H01625 and H01725, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent cancellation H01525, my apologies, subject to the conditions of approval, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H01625, subject to the conditions of approval, and that the Land Division Committee for the County of Haliburton grant provisional approval of application for consent H01725, subject to the conditions of approval. Member McKelvey?
Yes.
Member Snyder?
Yes.
Member Donald?
Yes.
Member Kennedy?
Yes.
And Chair Danielson?
Yes. That's carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other business that the committee needs to discuss? that you're aware of at this point?
I think normally this is where we tell you how many applications we have for the next month. We have a few. I think right now it's 3 or 4. So we do have a meeting in August, so we will have a bit of a normal agenda for that one.
I would point out that the agenda says August the 11th, and in fact, I think the date is August the 12th. That's the Monday. So if everyone's
No, August 11th is the Monday.
Oh, look at that. I'm looking at the wrong year. My apologies. Is everyone available on August the 11th? See, that'll teach me for keeping 2 years in my book. Okay, if there's no further business, thanks so much, Elizabeth. And could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Members Kennedy and McKelvey, thank you.
Be it resolved that the July 14th, 2025 Land Division Committee meeting be hereby adjourned.
All in favor? Nobody ever says no to that one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great
Yeah,
afternoon.
have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Good job.